Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa. Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world. West Alabama, we're here in downtown Northport. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you're watching us, The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Of course, I am Joe Gaither. You are the listener, the viewer. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. We appreciate you guys so much. Give us a like, review, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And make sure that you subscribe to our other Bama Central Broadcasting Network podcast, Blue Collar Unplugged, with our friends Matthew Gibson, Blake Byler, and Jacob Pickle, talking all things Alabama basketball related. We are, right at 50 days until Alabama tips off against whoever they're playing on November 7th. That just escaped my mind. But we're not here to talk about Alabama basketball today. We're going to be knee-deep in Football Friday. It's Football Friday, and I'm so excited to be joined by the Bama Central staff. You'll see them popping in and out of the program today. Miss Katie Windham, the only one on time, the only responsible one. We'll find Austin Hannon and Chris Walsh and anyone else who wants to join the show today. But we're going to have a lot of fun talking Alabama football, talking SEC football, and getting into the weekend. So without further ado, you can follow Katie Windham at Katie Windham _ on the Twitter machine. How is your Friday going?
It's going good, Joe. I'm a little worried about my internet connection right now if I start cutting in and out because it's already freezing up a little bit. So apologies in advance if that happens. But things are going well on this Friday. Looking forward to another big weekend in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a blast. Probably, a lot very similar to 2 weekends ago. Actually, I'm seeing a lot of people selling tickets. I'm wondering if everybody's jumping off the Alabama bandwagon over the last 2 weeks. We've had an inside look here going up to the facility, covering the football team, covering all things Alabama on BamaCentral.com, the Sports Illustrated home for Alabama. You can follow it at BamaCentral.com, at BamaCentral on the Twitter machine, and at BamaCentral SI on Instagram. Going to be a fun weekend. Alabama hosting Ole Miss, SEC opener. So many great storylines. Lane Kiffin coming back to Tuscaloosa, bringing his buddy Pete Golding, our buddy Pete Golding. And really, oh gosh, I think the feel in Tuscaloosa, the feel in Alabama is pure nerves, pure unease, pure anxiety. Early in the week, Katie, I was thinking the same thing. It's going to be a hard game for Alabama. The last 2-3 days, I've kind of been feeling like Alabama's going to surprise some people. I'm wondering if I'm having crimson-colored glasses. I'm still kind of thinking about my own pick for our betting line that we're going to do it closer to the end of the program. But what's been your feel through the week? Have you been solid on your thought from Sunday to today, or have you been moving and changing? And has it been a fluid thought process for you? What's been kind of your overall thoughts on this weekend's game?
I'd say I'm more fluid like you've been. I don't think I've been locked in on one thing. I will say, honestly, from the very start of this week, it's been a surprise for me. I was not expecting Saban to come out right away in his opening statement on Monday and name Jalen Milroe the starter. I'm not saying I wasn't expecting Jalen Milroe to be the starter. I just wasn't expecting Saban to say it at the very beginning of the week because, in a way, it goes against everything he said before the season started in fall camp about we're not going to release a depth chart because we want guys still fighting for the job. We're not, nothing's set in stone. It's just a piece of paper, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it signifies, okay, that this is the guy, which he's, repeatedly said throughout the week in other media availabilities, coaches teleconference, Wednesday, Pat McAfee, hey coach, all of it. He's basically said, yeah, this is our guy. We have confidence in Jalen. This is who we're putting behind. And so really, I'm kind of like you in that, the more I think about it, I did a radio show earlier this week where I was talking to somebody where I thought that after the loss, the USF game may have been the point where Alabama wanted to come out and make a point, against a team that was not great, had coming off a really poor season, a chance for them to come out and dominate. And the defense played pretty well last Saturday. But obviously, Alabama was working through a lot on offense. Okay, we saw no Jalen Milroe. We saw Tyler Buckner start. He really struggled. We saw Ty Simpson come in. He did okay. The offensive line struggled throughout the whole game. The running game finally got going in the second half. And so, now as the week's gone on, the more Saban's talked about Milroe, and that's who he's putting his confidence behind. I think maybe this is the game that I thought would be last Saturday. Maybe this is the game that Alabama comes out and has something to prove of, now that they have their guy and they're sticking with them, that this is their chance. Now, will they be able to do that? I don't know. But because I know Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding on the other sideline have a lot of what's the right word? I don't know. This game means a lot to them for obvious reasons. They've both spent time as coordinators at Alabama. And so, Pete Golding is very familiar with this program, with the guys that are currently in the program. Obviously, Lane knows Saban pretty well, but he's now a couple of years removed from Alabama. But Pete, recruited a lot of these guys. He coached a lot of these guys last year, and so he's familiar with this program. And Lane's, I'm sure, been drawing up some crazy plays to go up against Alabama, and so it's going to be a good one for sure this weekend.
Absolutely, and we'll transition just to talk about these Ole Miss coaches real quick right here. And I love your outlook already with last week's game with USF. And that's what's kind of giving me more confidence is maybe they're just experimenting one last time, one final experiment. But we'll set that aside real quick. You bring up Pete Golding and his recruiting and Lane's motivation, their extra kind of little extra juice going into this weekend's game. Pete Golding, he was the subject of a lot of scrutiny over 5 years here in Tuscaloosa. Anytime anything would go wrong, anytime a team would score a touchdown, it's fire Pete Golding. Look, he needs a haircut. Oh my gosh, he needs to shave. Oh, he's a dummy. And basically people, would refer to his background in Louisiana and refer to his, he coached at Delta State. Who is this guy? He has no pedigree. Why does Coach Saban like him? This, that, and the other. And basically it just dogged him, just out and out dogged him for 4.5, 5 years. And Coach Saban's always been the type to don't listen to the outside noise. I don't listen to any of that stuff, but it's kind of difficult to not hear any of it. And so Pete Golding's got to have some sort of a recognition that, or some sort of an understanding that he's been kind of the brunt of any mishaps here in Tuscaloosa, any less than perfect defense in Tuscaloosa has fallen under his standards. So how motivated I feel like, he's coming back to Tuscaloosa to really try to, I've been using the term get his name back this weekend, but how motivated do you think, or what kind of aspect do you think that really creates for this game? Pete Golding kind of coming back to Tuscaloosa in a place where he wasn't really loved.
Yeah, personally, I really don't think that like getting his name back is necessarily something he's worried about. I think it's more just maybe him wanting to beat Alabama. I'm sure there's got to be some personal, feelings of being back here, and but yeah, I don't know if that's that in itself, if he's really that worried about what the fans think or what people have said about him. But I do think though, like his familiarity with all of this will help. Now, I don't know, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't studied the, Ole Miss defense a lot. I haven't watched their film from this year. I guess 2 weeks ago, saw a little bit of their game against Tulane as I was getting ready before I went to Bryant-Denny for the Texas game. But I didn't watch any of their game last week against Georgia Tech. And so, but I don't know if Pete has the personnel at Ole Miss right now to be able to get to a place where in this game this season, he's going to be able to get his name back. I don't know if he has the defense right now where this is his first year over there, where he's going to kind of be able to, I don't know, prove whatever points he wants to. And so I think it was maybe at one point talking with Austin, I don't know if it was when we were recording in just a minute or before, talking about, against Texas, Alabama couldn't keep up with the scoring of the Longhorns, and Quinn Ewers obviously had a good game. And so will they be able to do that this weekend is kind of the question. But Pete Golding does in a way have something to prove. I just don't know if that's something personally for him that motivates him, or if it's more just wanting to beat Alabama for whatever reasons.
Well, you talk about the keeping up with Ole Miss, and I think that's going to a pretty big factor, and it puts a lot of pressure on Tommy Rees. Our friend Julian Lean commenting, Tommy Rees hoping he has his big boy pants. And yes, Julian, I think all of Alabama Nation hopes that he has a good game plan this coming up weekend. You guys can jump in on the comments if you want to join us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube at Joe Gaither 6 and at BamaCentral. So really, let's go into the quarterback discussion with Tommy Rees and the offense, because Ole Miss this year has started traditionally slow through the first three weeks. The first halves have kind of been a little good, but not great. But then that third quarter, oh my gosh, they've had third quarter explosions in all three games, really ultimately beating Tulane by 17, beating Georgia Tech by 23, and then putting up a big 77 spot against the mighty Mercer Bears. Really, with Tommy Rees, he knows he's got Jalen Milroe as his guy. We go back to last week. We go through the first 3 weeks, and I wonder to myself how much of, I want to call this game plan because I want to call this offense because this is the offense that I like. This is the offense that I think will be most effective. And now I have Tyler Buckner and Tyler Simpson. They'll be able to operate my offense in week number 3 against USF. And oh gosh, no, they weren't. Okay, I'm stuck with Jalen Milroe. How much different stylistically do you think this Alabama offense, or maybe not different, but trimmed down or honed down or what's hemmed down specifically for Jalen Milroe, do you think that the offense will be this weekend? And with that kind of as the overall context, I'm hopeful that Alabama is able to really control the ball on the ground, control the clock, and not force the defense out there every third play to go against fast-paced defense and leave them out there. Because even against Texas, the defense played well. The defense played well until the fourth quarter when they had been left out there the whole time and put into bad situations. So the pressure's on Tommy Rees, and the pressure's on Tommy Rees to construct a game plan that will be conducive not only for Jalen Milroe, but for the entire team against really the Ole Miss offense as the other side. How much confidence, or what's your thought process on Tommy Rees's adjustments going into this week where he knows Jalen Milroe is my guy? I'm not calling down to Saban to say, let's put in Buckner, let's put in Simpson. What's going to be his outlook or your thoughts on his approach to this weekend?
Yeah, that's a great question about how much is the offense going to be kind of tailored to Milroe now that he is the guy. I think talking to the players this week, it's been interesting to hear them say, and so I'm guessing, even though they really said this on Monday before they would have even met with the coaches that much, but hearing them say that this is the key to the offense is being balanced. The run game opens up the pass game. The passing game opens up the running game. And it's just been interesting to me that, in the offseason, throughout the spring and fall, Saban really heralded the running back groups. The running back group is, this is a strength of our team. This is the group I have the most confidence in, barring injury. This is the group I think we're set at. And so far this year, which I know he talked later into the week about getting Justice Haynes and Jay Miller more involved, but so far it's basically been Jace and Roydell, and Jace may have gotten a little banged up last Saturday against USF, and Roydell really kind of carried the load in the second half. But the Texas game through the first half, the USF game, Roydell had not looked good this year, and part of that, of course, is the offensive line. They got a block for him, but to me, it's almost like because of the struggles Alabama's had, or not, I don't know if struggles is the right word, but figuring out their quarterback situation, you would think they would rely on the running game a little bit more. And so will we see more running this week? Which, I know that's what you're asking me, but maybe I think with Jalen Milroe now being the guy, I would expect to see maybe more design runs, more options. Kind of one of his strengths that was a question mark coming into the year, but that we've seen early on is his ability to throw the deep ball. And so if you're able to pick away with those chunk rushes, and it maybe can open up the passing game. And then if Ole Miss or whoever else Alabama's playing has to respect the deep ball, then that opens up the middle for Jalen to scramble more. And so, I think with the way this team has played so far this year, and obviously the coaching staff thinks this too, they've said Jalen's played the best, but I think based on the strengths and weaknesses we've seen, Jalen Milroe is the best option at quarterback for this team. He's the one who can make the most out of nothing. We saw his very first touchdown of the year. The ball rolls past him. He scores a touchdown. And so if the offensive line is not going to be the best that it's been under Alabama, which it's not. If the wide receivers are going to struggle to create separation, then Jalen Milroe is the best guy that can we've seen so far that can move the ball effectively with this offense.
Well, let's talk about the offensive line before we get Austin Hannon brought into the program. He's getting lined up in the backstage, getting ready to go. Let's talk about the offensive line. You've got major problems, and when you rewatch these games, it's some of the worst offensive line play I can remember in the Nick Saban era. Now, obviously, you don't have Tyler Booker last week, and that becomes an issue. And Coach Saban says, "Oh, he helps out Caden Proctor." Caden Proctor looked bad. Not even really. He looked bad last weekend, and obviously he's a freshman, 5-star freshman out of Iowa. It's a much different game going from high school in Iowa going to high level college football. Total difference there. But the offensive line has failed to really get consistent push in the running game. It's been mostly I'll stalemate a guy at the line, and maybe you can pop through the line, and you got to deal with the linebackers yourself, running back. So you're stalemating in the running game, and then you've gotten beat on 3-man rushes. You've gotten beat on 4-man rushes. Anytime that any opposing team has brought 5 or more, it's like carnage in the backfield. And the running backs, I think, going back to your early conversation, I think the running backs are struggling in pass protection, and that usually is why freshmen like Justice Haynes don't get on the field. We saw Derrick Henry go a whole year without really getting on the field, and I think pass protection was the reason for that. The seniors, Jason Roydell, haven't really been great in pass pro either. Is it Eric Wolford's scheme? Are the guys too big? You've heard that a lot the last couple of weeks. We heralded the big offensive line, but they're too big. They're too slow. They're not athletic enough to handle any agility. I mean, you had a defensive back last week get 3 sacks when he had no sacks previously in the first 2 weeks. So what's the fix for the offensive line? I've been calling for, obviously you get Tyler Booker back. You got to get Tyler Booker back this week. And our man Austin Hannon broke the news last night that Tyler Booker and Jaheim Otis would be back into the program, or would be back involved in this weekend's game. But you got to get some continuity, some semblance on the offensive line, 5 fingers working as one fist. So I've been calling for Proctor, Booker, McLaughlin, and then popping out Darian Dalcourt and sticking TJ Ferguson in that spot and playing JC Latham, but I don't even know if that's going to work. I don't even know if that's the issue, if it's a schematic issue with Eric Wolford, if it's an understanding issue with, hey, we got 5 guys confused on a call, or if it's just a physical issue. Coach Saban after the Texas game talking about these guys are too soft setting, these guys aren't holding up, the pocket's getting collapsed, and I wonder, well, you can't really fix that in a week. The guys you have are the guys that you have. If they're not strong enough, if they're not fast enough, then what do you do? How have you diagnosed this Alabama offensive line?
I mean, I'm not an X's and O's expert or an offensive line expert, but by my amateur eye, I think that comment is probably true, that they're not maybe as strong as they look. I think, like you said, this is, to me, is maybe the biggest concern about this Alabama team for me is like the offensive line play. I don't think it's just a switch you flip that they're all of a sudden going to be better, but I'm like, I don't think this team can be significantly better unless the offensive line play improves. And so I think part of it, you maybe do have to look at the conditioning is like, are these guys ready for, to play 60-minute games? It is the 5 that they're putting out there the best combination that they have. I've seen a lot of people saying Caden Proctor is not good, which he has not looked good, like you said, Joe, but he must be better than Elijah Pritchett, or they would put Pritchett out there, Do you switch out Darian Dalcourt and put in somebody else for him? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think that tomorrow, the Ole Miss game is going to tell us a lot about where this team is and where this offensive line is. Can they protect Jalen Milroe? Can they effectively push or control the line of scrimmage so that Alabama can run the ball better to feature those running backs better? Can they give Milroe more time to throw? Because to me, like I said, I think this is the area of the team that's the biggest concern about if Alabama can truly get back in that, CFP race.
Coach Austin Hannon, offensive coordinator, Austin Hannon. You can follow him at Austin Hannon _. How would you diagnose this offensive line? Fix this Alabama offense. Get it going as Ole Miss comes to town on Saturday.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, me and Blake were talking about it in Tampa last week was, and I think me and Katie have talked about it before, but why they play J.C. Latham on the right side, which that's not necessarily going to fix everything, but you would like to put normally your best offensive lineman when you have a right-handed passing quarterback on the left side, and they haven't been doing that, and you've seen a lot of pressure come from that side. So I'm not saying that Latham's perfect, not saying that if you moved him to left tackle, it would fix everything, but I think maybe you try to rotate guys around, and now that you're in the middle of the season, that might make things even more confusing and mess even more things up. But I think you can try some different guys on the line. He hasn't really wanted to do that much. Obviously, Ferguson got to play last game in place of Booker, but I think when things aren't working, you have to try out different guys. I mean, they're all talented recruits that were high-profile finds out of high school, so I mean, they can all play football. It's just putting together the right five, and I don't know if they found it yet, but we'll definitely find out tomorrow.
Yeah, and you hit it right there, Austin. Coach Saban talked all through fall camp. We have 7 to 8 offensive line guys that we think are starters. But you've only seen 5. I mean, 6 now that Ferguson got some action. And so, after the Texas game, I asked Coach Saban, are you going to see any of that depth? And he kind of basically gave the political answer of, the guys that have played are the guys who have earned the positions and the guys who have earned trust. Well, if you said you have 7 to 8 starting offensive linemen and the first 5 are having, holes, are blocking like a sieve, then why don't we see TJ Ferguson, Elijah Pritchett? And I never could really guess who that 8th lineman would have been. Austin, maybe you're smarter than me and can guess who that 8th lineman can be. But what's the stubbornness? I mean, you've played a lot of wide receivers already this year. That's a place where you play a lot of guys. You've played 2 or 3 of your running backs, really, that you've talked about your 4-star running backs. You've played a lot of inside linebackers. You've played a pretty decent amount of defensive linemen. You've been pretty set in the secondary, but the offensive line, you haven't done much rotation, much movement, much experimenting. What's with the stubbornness? And would you change anything? I mean, obviously you're out of mulligans. You're out of all the games from here on out. Pretty much count doubly in the SEC season. What would your approach be if you're Tommy Rees?
Yeah, I like Katie said earlier. I mean, if it's really a personnel issue and they don't feel like the guys that are on the bench can do any better, then there's really nothing you can do except just hope the guys that you have do get better. And there's a long season for that to happen. And, just they've played 3 games and they did end up winning that game last Saturday. I think that's the one thing that a lot of Alabama fans struggled with. Yes, they were favored by 33, and yes, they were supposed to win by 30 or 40 points. But you did win by 14, and you didn't play the best quarterback on your roster probably. So, I mean, I think there was wins you can take out of that game. The defense looked good, but yeah, the O-line has a lot of work to do, and I think getting Booker back is going to help that. But now it's about, can they do what they've been talking about since fall camp and since the spring. So they'll be back healthy, it looks like, on the left side. So it's prove it now or never for Alabama on Saturday.
Well, let's talk about the rain delay real quick. Let's talk about the rain delay last weekend, because you guys went down to Tampa. You both drove down to Tampa. You'll both be in the press box tomorrow. You guys are boots on the ground. Just a non-football question. How does Katie Windham handle her rain delay?
Well, I joked and told people in there, I wish I would have brought my book in my backpack because I would have read during it. But it was scarce. You don't want to be, like we've talked about before, you don't want to be that person that complains about press box food. But in Tampa, I think because there was I almost said Patriots because I was thinking of Tom Brady. There was a Bucs game the next day, and I think it was the day game in Tampa.
Yes, they beat the brakes off the Bears.
Oh yes, I'm sorry to bring that up.
Oh shoot, no, they're terrible. The Bears are awful.
But so there was, going to be an NFL game in that same stadium. NFL reporters using that press box the next day, but USF, they provided a pregame meal that was like a box sandwich, and there was no like snacks or anything else like at any point after the game. So there was no snacks to eat during the rain delay. So I was kicking myself for forgetting my book. I don't normally bring books to games because there's not normally time to read.
You so hurt.
but I had brought books down on the trip to read in the car if I needed to. And then I brought snacks for the car on the road trip too, and I didn't put them in my backpack either. So I was kicking myself for no books, no snacks. But I guess we watched a little bit of other games, talked,
I left my binoculars at home too, so we had that going for us too. Couldn't see. Katie was my eyes.
I was checking. I spent a chunk of time. I think it started before the rain delay, and I finished up during. Maybe my stat I tweeted out that it was the first time in the Saban era they punted on 4 straight possessions to open a game against a non-Power 5 team. It took me a little while to go back and look through all those games, and so just kind of looking at the stats, trying to find interesting things, not knowing how long the delay would last. But it is times like that you're thankful that you're in a press box and not out in the elements where it started pouring the rain.
Austin, how would you spend you forgot your binoculars. What was your main passing of the time for the rain delay?
I guess there really was. And it doesn't really last as long as you think it would. Just like, yeah. And just like when you get to the game 3.5 hours early, the time kind of flies when you're up sitting there in the press box, regardless of if you're freezing cold or whatever else. I mean, time seems to move a lot faster up there. So the delay was, I think, 57 minutes or something. But like Katie said, there were no snacks, so you couldn't distract yourself with food. So it was just kind of all of us sitting there looking around, watching the rain come down. And eventually, obviously, in Florida, the sun comes back out.
Was it as hard as it looked on television? It looked like it was like a deluge.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. There was puddles on the field and all that kind of stuff.
But then, the sun dried it all up.
No, immediately. Yeah.
Also, here was the tea from the press box. The reason why for people, I mean, it's probably already been put out there by now, but why the game was looked like it was coming from outer space for a little bit was that ESPN had a different weather detection system or radar or something that they look at, and their system had detected lightning within however many miles of the stadium. And so they said it wasn't safe for them to start the game back. But both coaching staffs were no, we're starting this game back. No more delays. And so that was why there was Saban was ready to get on with it. And so that was
personally, I would love the television to have that angle always. That top angle, you see all 22. Yes, it makes the numbers a little challenging to see who's who, but you get the whole picture of the strategy. You get the whole picture of the passing, what's going on down the field. Oh, I love it so much. And I mean, yes, television is television. You got to get it nice and tight, and you want to see right up on your players' faces. But it makes the post-watch, the rewatch a whole lot easier when you're seeing the top-end screen and you're like, oh, these guys aren't getting open, or oh, these guys are all covered, or the progression's getting killed. So, but the problem was they kept switching from the all-22 at the top, and then they had a medium-range camera that was stagnant. And it was well, this stagnant camera, and they had to keep jumping through the stagnant cameras. If they had just left it on the top camera, everything would have been gravy.
I wonder how all that works. If they give the advertisers that are supposed to be, if they give them some sort of discount, they pay the money back for the quality of production that was going on, or what the deal is with that.
Well, let's bring in our friend Chris Walsh. Chris Walsh, right here, BamaCentral, has joined the program. You can follow him at Writing Walsh, and he has been working through, playing through pain the last week and a half. First, let's check in. How are you feeling post-surgery?
I'm fine, thanks.
Excellent, excellent. We've been talking about Alabama Ole Miss, and Katie and I basically gave our kind of overall arching thoughts, and I haven't hit Austin or Chris with overall arching thoughts of the game. Both Katie and I have realized our thoughts have been pretty fluid throughout the week. Austin, you texted me at the beginning of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, with your pick on the line, and you can reveal that when we get to the end of it. So it seems like you've been pretty set on your thought all week long. It's the pretty set thought. Give us your overarching thoughts on the ball game.
Yeah, this is just going to be really an interesting game. I think all the buildup all week from Lane Kiffin and from Nick Saban and all the things that have already gone down this week. I've already added to the storylines, but I think the game itself is just huge. And you draw comparisons, obviously, to the one in 2015, which our very own Will Miller put a story out on Jake Coker this morning about. And it's kind of like that, but it also, not everything happens twice. And So for Alabama fans that are just hoping that this is going to be the big turnaround and everything happens and everything goes great is maybe not true. The only reason I think that is I think we can only make predictions based off what we've seen. And what we've seen is that Ole Miss is a pretty good football team. And the last 2 weeks, Alabama hasn't been. So I think it's funny. And I've seen a lot of people kind of argue that maybe Ole Miss should be favored in this game just based off of play alone. And they've obviously gone on the road and beat Tulane already this year, which that's not Bryant-Denny Stadium, but it's a good win. So Jackson Dart looks a lot better in year 2 from his transfer from USC. So they've got a lot of good players, and right now Alabama's got a lot of question marks. So, yeah, I think Ole Miss has a great shot at an upset this weekend, and unless Alabama can really get this thing figured out.
Dr. Walsh.
I think anybody who's going to place a bet on this game is crazy, because we're 3 games in. We still don't know what Alabama has, how good it's going to be. There's still way too many questions. And, the season is marching on. This team's going to go one way or another. It's going to happen real fast here, So, and if I'm Lane Kiffin, I am throwing anything and everything I can think of. I mean, Alabama fans should just be happy that the defense is looking good, because if it was the other way around and Kiffin was scheming against this offense, I'd be scared to death, to be honest, just because Kiffin's that good of a schemer. I can't believe I just said that, schemer. But yeah, I mean, I understand why people are disappointed. I understand why they're just kind of like, what? I've heard some ridiculous things in the last couple of weeks, and we all have. But if we went back 6 months ago, and if you had asked me how is the season going to play out at the beginning, I would have said almost exactly what's happened. Okay. We have a quarterback competition. It's going to go into the season. It's going to take them a while to figure it out. The team is going to have to find its identity. It's going to struggle early on, and then hopefully it's going to, piece it together. And then we're going to see this team really grow and develop over the course of the season. The thing is, with the Texas loss, especially, there's now no margin for error, really. And so, it's how teams respond to situations like this, really key just about every season. Just this season, it's a lot more in your face. Last week, no one from Alabama should be happy about how the team played last week. No one on the team, no one surrounding it. That was really, I mean, granted, I wasn't there. I was at home. I had just had eye surgery. Really just it was hard to watch. I mean, I don't care what camera angles they used. I mean, they could have put them in outer space and I would have been like, man, this is hard to watch. Could have put them on the ground. You kind of hope that maybe with the break that they were going to kind of, rally in the locker room, come back and play better. No, it didn't happen. I mean, it seemed to actually get worse. And they gotta find themselves, and they gotta do it really darn fast. So it's funny because I hear all these people like, what do you think is going to happen on Saturday? I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. Let's find out. So.
Yeah, I'm still about 20 minutes away from announcing a pick, and I'm sitting here thinking I have no idea what I'm going to say on that aspect. Let's hit. Last night, Chris Lowe was here in town to serve as the media guest. He also put out a pretty lengthy piece where ESPN where Nick Saban said the only reason we played Simpson and essentially he said the reason that Simpson and Buckner played last week was because I promised all 3 quarterbacks time. That's it. And then he also goes, I don't know anyone who has 16 years going 16 years without a bump in the road. I think you're getting a lot of overreaction on the social media about that interview or about that article, these quotes. The early Coach Saban would have never said anything like that. Would have never said, who doesn't have a bump in the road? But Chris, you're exactly right. Going into the season, basically just said the Texas game was a glorified exhibition. You know, you got to win the SEC West, get to the SEC championship game, and now everything's right in front of you. Scott Hunter on our program on Tuesday said the same thing, that all the games that don't matter are now out of the way, and the real season begins on Saturday. With kind of the Saban comments as the backdrop, and now declaring Jalen Milroe as the starter as like the forefront, we'll just go right around the table. Do you think the clarity of deciding, hey guys, the quarterback competition is over, the cake is out of the oven, as he said, Austin Hannon wrote on BamaCentral.com on Wednesday. The cake came out of the oven, went back in the oven, and now it's ready. So, Austin, do you think the clarity that Jalen is the guy, Tommy Rees, you got to figure it out with Jalen, the whole team knows that you're not going to anybody else, do you think the clarity is going to set the team on the right course for the real vital part of the season?
I think it definitely can. I think that's a very big step for football teams kind of moving forward in their season, is deciding on who's the leader, who's going to be the guy that plays quarterback. And obviously everybody that watches football knows it's probably the most important position in not just football, but probably sports, just because of how much, control they have of the game. The ball's always in their hand, and they're usually the captain or leader of the team. So I think it's definitely going to be important that they've settled on Jalen Milroe, and now it's about how can Tommy Rees turn the offense towards his positives, the things he can do well. So I think the game plan against Texas on offense wasn't great, just in terms of the personnel that you had on the field, with you playing Jalen Milroe at quarterback. I think they need to do some different things in the running game and the passing game, and keep Ole Miss's defense on its toes, because Pete Golding knows just about everybody on this Alabama team on both sides of the ball. So he knows the strengths and the weaknesses of Jalen Milroe. He knows the strengths and weaknesses of the running backs and the receivers, because he's been practicing against those guys their whole career there. So he's going to have a great game plan ready. And if Tommy Rees doesn't, that's just another reason that there could be another upset on the board this weekend.
Katie, do you think the clarity is going to basically set the course for the rest of the year, for the team? Put all the junk behind them?
I think it's kind of like Chris said, like we don't know. I would think it's hard to think that providing clarity doesn't help in some way. I feel like it has to help the offense settle in to know that this is our guy. This is who we're rallying around the rest of the year. This is who we can trust. And so I would think in that sense, it's got to help the players. It's got to help the team. That it certainly seems like from some of the comments from the players, some of the social media stuff, that some of it, got deleted to, that Jalen Milroe is the guy maybe most of them rally around and believe in. And so in that sense, you would think it would help. But like me and you were talking about earlier, Joe, it's going to depend on, can Tommy Rees narrow in an offense that is more tailored to Jalen Milroe that's going to give Alabama the best chance at success.
What jumped out to me the most from Saban's comments, well, let me backtrack real quick. One thing that Saban's not going to do is ever say anything negative really about one of his players. He's not going to throw him under the bus, kind of thing. So this whole time when there's been this discussion of, his leadership and so forth, I haven't been buying that, especially since I think a lot of times when reporters ask that question, they don't really know what they're asking. Did you like the guy's leadership? Sure. It's what exactly are you talking about? The thing is, and I think everyone here will agree with me, the problem with Milroe's biggest problem so far is the same thing as last year. It's his decision making, and Saban can't say that. Because if you do that, you got to get the guy second guessing himself, and they need the exact opposite. As Jay Coker pointed out in our story this morning, he just needs to play and basically not think, and that's the way it's been for every other guy who's had a quarterback competition. The guy who's most comfortable, and is going to be the guy that they're pretty much going to go with. So now, having said that, yes, I believe that Saban told all three guys, everyone's going to get playing time. Everyone's going to get a shot. Personally, I was a little surprised that the way it played out a little bit at South Florida. But we've seen this before. We saw it back when we, quarterback competitions when Jalen Hurts didn't start and then came in, and then we saw it again with Jay Coker, again, referring to that story. So having said all that, yes, having the guy saying, this is our guy, this is the guy that we're going to rally around, I think is definitely going to help. And it's still, though, I think the identity of this team is going to be mostly trying to shove the ball down people's throats. That's the way it's got to be. Especially with the way that the line is played. So I think it's going to be kind of an interesting dynamic, especially like what happens if Alabama falls behind, in this game, say like Ole Miss takes a lead, just like that 2015 game. Is Saban going to have an itchy trigger finger? Well, it's going to depend on what Milroe does, but there's a lot of possibilities here. If I'm Pete Golding, I'm going to blitz every single down. Every single down. I don't even care if it's a run down or a pass down. Yeah. I'm going to put as much pressure on that quarterback and trying to mess him up as much as possible. And if I'm Alabama, I'm trying to run the ball, and I'm going to run at least 20 screen passes to try to counter that.
Well, let's talk about my favorite coach in the SEC. Sorry, Nick Saban, it's not you. It's Lane Kiffin, because I love his offensive, his analytical approach, his risk-taking mindset. But I also love what he does online as a troll, as just a poking, being silly and, cryptic tech tweets and things like that. CJ Watson hits a great point, and it's probably been the main reason why I'm starting to lean back on the Alabama way. Lane Kiffin out-coaching himself. Do we think that – look, it's all in front of it. Lane Kiffin knows exactly what we've been saying. Alabama looks as vulnerable as probably they've ever looked in the last 15 years or so under Nick Saban. If Lane Kiffin doesn't win this matchup, he's going to walk back to Oxford with his tail between his legs. He's had 4 games against Nick Saban. 3 of them have been extremely close. Rocky Block, you had the 2020 year where neither defense could get a stop, and then last year was a 6-point game. So he's had a lot of chances to beat Nick Saban. This one looks like maybe his best opportunity. Do you think he might be getting out of it? Do you think he might get in front of his skis a little bit, out over his skis? Do you think he's enjoying the moment a little too much? Obviously, he's going on, Sunday saying, Alabama's got a different defensive coordinator, just sowing discord through the Alabama nation. He's going on to Twitter. Katie, I don't know Taylor Swift very well, but maybe you do. What's the Castle is Crumbling song that he's been tweeting about Taylor Swift? Castle is Crumbling. He's been interacting back and forth with his own dog's Twitter account. The dog is, I'm afraid to go to Tuscaloosa, and he's responding, if you're afraid, stay home. He's been finding the Alabama fans who are saying, Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding are going to come beat us, aren't they? And putting little smiley face emojis on the tweet. So is he feeling himself a little too much? Do you think he's going to get out, out-coach himself, as C.J. Watson wisely puts it?
I don't know if in that sense, I think that's more just like his personality, him doing all that stuff on Twitter. But he has, you think back to 2 years ago, the game in Tuscaloosa is now like infamous, get your popcorn ready. And then Alabama gets up 28-0 because he goes for some 4th downs, maybe that he shouldn't have. I think maybe kind of that's what he's referring to with out coaching. And so I think Lane's just I don't know if cocky is even the right word, because I don't even know if that's what it is. I think he just likes to have fun on social media. And I don't know if it's necessarily because he thinks he's going to win the game. I think that's just kind of how he is, because he's, like you said, he likes to be a little bit of a troll on social media. But I'm like somebody commented on here earlier. I mean, and like Chris said, I mean, Lane's going to be throwing everything at him. And I also think in the past, in a way, it's still like this Ole Miss. Lane hasn't necessarily had anything to lose against Alabama, because his teams, they're having good seasons, but they're not. They weren't in the CFP race. They weren't in the SEC race. So if they beat Alabama, that's huge for him. That's huge for that fan base. That's huge for that program. But if they lose, it's not the end of the world. Whereas this year for Alabama, if they lose, it's not for Alabama. It's not the end of the world, but it might be the end of the world as people know it in Tuscaloosa if Alabama starts this year too. But Ole Miss is just 2 spots behind Alabama in the rankings. They haven't lost yet this year, and so
Ole Miss number 1 in the BamaCentral power rankings.
Yeah, there you go. You have it here, and that's the most official thing out there. And so Lane, in a way, still doesn't have anything to lose. Where this loss wouldn't derail their season, but it would be huge for them, so that he has the opportunity to just put everything out on the table, go all in with trick plays, crazy offenses, whatever, to try and knock off Nick Saban in Alabama. Which that used to be such the illustrious thing of the assistants not beating him, and now it's kind of, you don't want to say old hat, but it's becoming a lot more common now with Kirby and Sark and Jimbo.
Chris, you think we're going to see Lane Kiffin outsmart himself?
I don't know, but I am curious to know if the dog's coming. What happens? How would the fans react if the dog suddenly did something on the field?
Not sure what the Bryant Denny policies are on dogs on the field.
Can you imagine?
I bet you if you have a poop bag, it's all right.
Somebody's going to have to follow if he was here the whole time. Oh, man. We're okay. I'm sorry I brought it up.
No.
No, the question, can he outsmart himself? Yeah. He doesn't have anything to lose. If they lose this game, everyone's just going to it's Alabama. It's the same old stuff, and they still got it. But if he pulls off a win, here's the other thing about that, because now we have Steve Sarkisian, former assistant, winning, who we all know is like really buddy with Lane. So I'm sure that they've been talking about what worked, what didn't work. But so now we have, what is it, 4 assistants now have been beaten Saban?
3. It was Kirby. It was Jimbo, then Kirby, now Sarkisian.
Maybe it just seems like more, but I think that would have been a big deal to Lane if he had been the first, or maybe even the second. Now, not so much, but I don't know. It's Lane. You never know what he's going to do. I'm sure he's going to go for 4th down at least 2 times too many, and that's great. It makes it exciting and it makes it fun for everyone and lots of drama. But Alabama secondary is pretty good. I thought the defense looked great last week.
Chris, do you think that they've changed defensive coordinators?
I think I'm more in line with what Saban was kind of saying this week, and I'm sure that they figured out a way to speed up signals, whereas you have someone on the sideline who can he doesn't have to sit there and talk and go back and forth. It's an immediate thing. If you see this, you call this. And I'm sure that was a big part of it. I mean, they were playing a speed up team last week. So that's when you test those things out and, or you go to those things. So I think if, we've already once been through Kevin Steele suddenly not calling plays. 2 games. No, it was just way too early. I was like, if that's going to happen, it's going to, probably, unless they know, like right off the bat, is like, this isn't going to work. That happened with another coordinator one year. And
that's how Pete Golding got the job.
Yeah. That's how Pete Golding ended up calling the plays. So, but we're not going to go there. So yeah, I'm not, him pushing that button, I thought was really kind of interesting. And I wasn't exactly sure where he was going with that. I do not think that Kevin Steele has been demoted. No, and in fact, I've seen some signs of things that Kevin Steele is doing that seems to be paying off. Granted, there have been a lot, too many penalties, but a lot of them have been on the offensive side. There haven't been that many, I don't think, on the defensive side.
Austin, let's hit your thoughts on Lane Kiffin. Do you love him like I do? Go for it on 4th down every time. No reason not to. I mean, if you're on the other side of the 50, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you just know what you're going to get with them. I mean, and I've said that not just in terms of schematically, but when you hire him as a head coach, like all the fans that want him to be the head coach at Alabama after Saban. And I just think that you kind of know what the ceiling is with him. He's just the way he plays and coaches football. You're usually going to be a 2 or 3 loss team. It's just every now and then those decisions that he makes are going to bite him. And last year it really did down the stretch kind of hurt him a little bit. So starting with the Alabama game, which they were, I believe, 8-1 when Alabama came to Oxford last year, still in the race and had a 14-3, 14-0 lead early on. and then fumbled that game away and ended up losing just about every game the rest of the season. So his teams have a real streakiness about them. And right now being 3-0, that means they're kind of at the height of what they're playing right now. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a good team, and you know what you're going to get with Lane Kiffin. He's going to go for it on 4th and 2, 4th and 3 on your side of the field just about every time. So it can hurt you sometimes, but it's also, it's got the recipe for an upset too.
All right, so we talked about Alabama Ole Miss at length right here for the first most part of the program. It's the first big slate of the SEC weekend. You got 6 SEC games. We'll go hit each one of them real quick. We'll just go right around the circle, and we'll start at the 11 o'clock game, and then we'll wrap with our predictions for Alabama Ole Miss. So let's start on the poll. Let's start out in Texas. Auburn is going to Texas A&M. Auburn 3-0, no SEC game so far. A&M 2-1, lost to Miami, but beat 2 scrubs. Katie Windham, how you feeling about the Tigers and the Aggies?
It's hard to know what to make of A&M through the first 3 weeks, but honestly, also Auburn too. First year under Hugh Freeze. I think I would say if it was in Auburn, I would pick Auburn, but I think I'm gonna go with A&M.
Dr. Hannon?
Yeah, this is going to be a wake-up call for Auburn, I think. They've had kind of a light schedule through the first 3 weeks. They are 3-0, so they're ahead of Alabama right now. But after what I saw, how they played in Berkeley a couple weeks ago against kind of a pretty subpar California team, I think A&M was going to get right at home this week, and they'll beat Auburn by double digits.
I think you got to go. This is a must-win for A&M.
Yeah.
It's just their packet is against the wall already, but it's a home game. Yeah, I agree with Katie in that respect. I think the home field advantage in this is huge. You got to go with the Aggies.
4 for 4. I'm going Texas A&M as well to let Jimbo Fisher give Hugh Freeze a little dose of reality. Let's go over to Nashville. Kentucky is taking on Vanderbilt. Kentucky, 13.5-point favorite. Kentucky has played 3 scrubs already, making it 4th this weekend. Katie Windham.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Kentucky.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I like Vandy at home. I think that the 13.5 spread's a little bit too much in favor of Kentucky. I like Vandy to cover that. I do think Kentucky will win the game. But look out. I think Vandy's offense is a little bit better under the third year under the new coach. So A.J. Swan's playing good at quarterback. I think Vandy keeps it close. Kentucky will win.
That sounds good to me.
Go Big Blue right there. We're going to skip 2:30 game. Obviously, Alabama Ole Miss. We'll hit that at the very end. 6 o'clock as you guys are wrapping up and really ramping up your work at BamaCentral.com. Arkansas is going down to Baton Rouge and taking on the Tigers on ESPN. Jaden Daniels and them boys, 17.5-point favorites. Katie Windham, do the Hogs have a chance in the battle for the boot?
I mean, I'm not going to say they don't have a chance. I last Saturday, because it was an away game, I didn't get to watch much other college football. I know Arkansas blew the game late against BYU. And because this week's at LSU's coming off a big win over Mississippi State. Big in the sense that they won by a lot of points, not necessarily that it was a big game. I'm going to go LSU.
Yeah, LSU looked a lot better last week in Starkville, which I kind of had them on upset alert last week. I thought Mississippi State had a good chance at home, but that was obviously very wrong, as we found out before Alabama kicked off, and LSU blew them out. They're playing really good football. They're at home. You always got to take the Tigers when they're at Tiger Stadium. So I'll take LSU. I think there's going to be a lot of points in that game.
Yeah, I think you got to take LSU. But here's what I'm looking for in this one. LSU obviously lost to Florida State in the opener and then put up 72 on Grambling. I want to see what happens when there's a team that is able to kind of hit them in the mouth. And I think Arkansas has got a chance to do that. But, Death Valley at night, no, I'm going with LSU.
I'm going with LSU as well, but I think Chris nails the analysis right there with Arkansas trying to swing for the fences, trying to hit them in the mouth. We're skipping Charlotte at Florida. We're skipping UAB at Georgia. We're skipping Memphis at Missouri. We're going to Mississippi State at South Carolina for the final SEC game on our list. South Carolina, 6-point favorite. Both teams looking like poo so far this year. Katie Windham.
Yeah, South Carolina, it's been a tough couple weeks for them, but I'm going to give them the rebound win at home over Mississippi State after holding the lead over the other Bulldogs in the SEC for a little bit last week. Maybe they can finish this week against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean, we watched it. Me and Blake did in the press box a little bit. South Carolina, I mean, really just got overpowered in the second half, which is not too surprising. We've seen Georgia do that a lot. They did it against Missouri last year when everybody thought they were on upset watch, and then they just kind of turned the corner like, Alabama used to back in the early days of the Saban era. And, they just put a team to sleep. They run the ball, and they play great defense. And I don't think they allowed any points after halftime in that game. And so South Carolina's a big game for Shane Beamer. I'll be in Columbia actually on Sunday. I've got to go with South Carolina. I think at home they're a lot better of a team than on the road, and I think Mississippi State. I think we're starting to see where people had the question marks about them coming into the season. I think they are probably going to finish last place in the SEC West, and because of that, I got to go with South Carolina to get a big win and get back on track.
I'm going to go with an upset on this one, and part of it is because we have the whole sandwich effect. South Carolina is between a Georgia loss and next week they're at Tennessee. And I don't know, maybe Mississippi State showed me enough when they played Arizona, but I think Mississippi State's gonna be one of those teams that just kind of goes along here and then just kind of sort of fades a little bit. So I don't know why I like the Cowbells on the road this week, and yeah. I can't really give you a good reason. I just like them.
There we go. I'm going Team Sandstorm over there in South Carolina. So Shane Beamer finally wins a decent game this year, to start this year, and we'll see how that goes. But now it's time for everyone's favorite game. Alabama, 6.5-point favorite. Austin can repeat his pick that he texted me on the line, the number that he texted me. Oh, gosh. I think we've got Austin and I are 2-1 so far this year, but I've taken all underdogs throughout the year. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Katie Windham, final thoughts and your pick on Alabama Ole Miss this weekend. You can read Katie Windham's great work at BamaCentral. Follow her on the Twitter machine at @KatieWindham_ for all her insight and analysis in the Bryant-Denny Stadium press box, in the press room after, and all things Alabama. What are your thoughts on Alabama Ole Miss?
I don't know. I've been spurned 2 weeks in a row. Okay. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So because of that, I'm not going to pick Alabama to cover the spread this Saturday. Even though the 6.5 line, that is just like one touchdown. So it's like if things get figured out, but last year's Ole Miss game was close, came down to the very end. Ole Miss had a chance to win at the end, and that seems to be a recurring theme for Alabama lately, close games. So I think I'll pick Alabama to win, but not cover.
Austin Hannon, give us the pick you text me, and then give me your final thoughts on what you think kind of the game's going to look like in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And follow Austin Hannon at @AustinHannon_. He will be in the Bryant-Denny Stadium press box as well, covering all things Alabama and every aspect of the game.
Yeah, I gave you Ole Miss +7 early in the week because I saw it keep dropping, and it started at, I think a couple sports books had it at 11 on Sunday, and immediately they all pushed it all the way back down to 7. Now it's at 6.5, I think. So it just keeps on trending down because I don't see why Ole Miss wouldn't be the trendy pick here. They're 3-0 against the spread this year. Alabama's 1-2. So Ole Miss has covered every game they've played. And you just really don't know what you're going to get from Alabama right now. If you get the performance or somewhat of a performance that you got week 1, where they're able to run the football and they're able to play good defense and they don't commit 28 penalties, then you might get an Alabama cover. But I just don't think there's enough evidence right now to put your money on the Crimson Tide. And they didn't give you a reason to last week or the week before. So why do it now when Ole Miss is trending in the other direction? So final score, I'm going to keep it up with straight up Alabama. I'm going to go 31-27 Alabama. But I do think Ole Miss, like Texas did, covers the spread at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Chris Walsh, what are you thinking here?
All right. I'm going to disqualify myself from this, and here's why, real quick. Being the publisher of BamaCentral, if I pick Alabama, I'm a homer, and I'm just doing it for the site. And if I don't pick Alabama, then I'm one of those guys. You hate Alabama, and it's not worth the headache. And I'm really
understandable. Sorry. I don't mean to put you in that position. Then I apologize.
No, that's okay. But I'm going to say this: I like Katie's pick a lot. I'll put it that way. Can we talk about the elephant in the room, though? Can we talk about Austin's hair?
You got a haircut. You're going to see the girlfriend next week. Is that what it's all about?
I can't say that's true. This haircut's about a week old now, so it's Katie's saw it about a week ago when it was really short. It's grown a little bit.
See, I can't see anything, so it's
Yeah.
All the world for Chris.
For those who don't know, I had eye surgery the day before the South Florida game, which, upon reflection, was a really, really good time to have it. But I am on the mend, and I've got at least another week, and it's coming along really, really well. But it's real quick. What they did, I had a torn retina, and they inserted a gas bubble into my eye. And the bubble kind of floats back up and it closes the hole and then it just kind of vanishes. So right now, if I look in my left eye only, it's like looking through a fishbowl where the liquid's moving around. And it's really fun. Like, you close your eyes, you're not supposed to see anything. I close my eyes, I can see stuff. So it's made it really hard to sleep. But all in all, it's going really well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you all again.
Are you using a pirate patch?
Nah, it's funny. My daughter and my wife have offered it, and then it's. I was like, nah, maybe we'll use it to have some fun one of these days. But, I'm stubborn, But
it seems like a ready-made Halloween costume already for it. We're what 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away from that.
Yeah. Well, the tricky thing about that is my daughter. She is turning 6 on Sunday. And we told her that we weren't going to start Halloween until after her birthday. And so this whole week she's been like, can we get out, Halloween stuff? And it's just like, sweetie, you just need to chill just for a couple more days. And we're going to cave on that. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. It's just a matter of when.
It's almost here at this point. You just have one more full day.
Well, the big thing is that we have a big surprise for the kids that we don't want them to know about, and it's just they're going to come home from school, and there's going to be something. How can I put it? Out in front of the yard that's very large, and so we wanted to do it kind of as a big family surprise, and it's at this point it's just like let the kids have what they want.
A zombie Big Al blowing up in the yard?
No, it's not. But I can't. I promised I would keep my mouth shut.
That's enough.
Ellen and Declan may tune into the Joe Gaither show, so we can't give it away.
Absolutely. I actually, one of the guests that I reached out to this week, she could not make it, but she said, "Oh, I've actually watched your show before." I said, "What? Oh, thank you." So, Chris, thank you for your platform and BamaCentral putting us on each and every day.
Hey, just think, in 2 years, we're going to be doing this show from the resort on a regular basis.
What do you know? Do you know anything beyond what the article stated, or anything extra than the article stated?
Well, I mean, I know the location.
You can divulge.
No, this is not a flash in the pan or just it's like, oh, the wishful thinking kind of thing. I mean, the money that they have backing them is very, very serious. They've got a wonderful location that they kind of lucked into, which it's right across the river. I mean, they could sit there and probably hear the softball stadium. And if they get this basketball arena ever built, I mean, that's just going to be a hop and skip right over, right there. So they give you an idea where they are. 5 minutes off campus, really, if that. And it's just, they're working on all the details and all, but it's they're full go. They're hoping to have it open fall 2025. And I'm about to start a major campaign to get them to call it BamaCentral, which I'm going to lose. That's okay. But the thing I'm going to really push for when I talk to them is doing some sort of a little studio over there, maybe poolside or something, that we could really take advantage of and have some fun with.
Well, dang, I got to get my game up for that. I absolutely have to get my game up for that. Speaking of the basketball stadium, Katie Windham had an interview with Greg Byrne, not out yet, and we don't want to give any details yet, but you'll be able to hear or you'll be able to read that on BamaCentral very, very soon. Katie sitting down with Greg Byrne today, and what did you get a full 30 minutes out of him?
I did. He's very generous this time.
Oh,
wow.
Man, we love Greg Byrne, and I can't wait to read that piece on BamaCentral.com. I'm going to go back to the conversation. I'm taking Bama minus the 6.5. I'm taking Bama for the first time this year. I'm going Bama 31, Ole Miss 24. I think Alabama figures it out finally offensively, and the defense plays as well as it's played already this year. So
here's a good question.
Yes.
Which team scores more defensive touchdowns this week?
Golly, yes.
Somebody posted, I saw highlights this week on Twitter of the 2016 Ole Miss game, and I think Alabama had more non-offensive touchdowns in that game alone than they've had all the last 2 seasons. So,
when was the last non-offensive touchdown for Alabama? Because Jalen Key didn't get in the end zone in the first week on his interception. He got pushed down on
Was it Will Anderson? It might have been Will Anderson's pick six last year.
Yep, against Utah State, right?
No, that was Louisiana.
No, Dallas Turner scoop and score at Neyland Stadium.
Yes.
Yeah, Jamison Williams, or not Jamison, somebody, didn't Kool-Aid have a punt return at one point last year?
Oh, yes.
By a penalty. Last week.
Yeah, last week we saw Terry on, but that got called back.
Well, that's good. We're going to have a lot of fun in Bryant-Denny Stadium tomorrow covering the game. You can follow us at BamaCentral.com, at BamaCentral on the Twitter machine, at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook as well. You can see you can see Katie Windham. It'll be Austin Hannon. Matthew Gibson will be in there as well. Edwin Stanton is going to be in there. And I'm missing somebody. Who else is going to be?
Blake.
Oh, my man Blake Byler is jumping off the basketball beat to watch some football. So you can follow all those great reporters on their social medias at Katie Windham _, at Austin Hannon _, and they'll be retweeting Blake, Edwin, and Matthew as well. So it's going to be a blast tomorrow. They'll be all over it. They won't be able to watch many other of the SEC games. We'll be covering them on BamaCentral for the power rankings. We'll see. Look, if Ole Miss wins, they're still number 1, and Alabama keeps sliding from 7 down to wherever they'll fall. Oh gosh, it's gonna be a blast of a weekend, and I really am looking forward to it. And I'm really thankful for all of you guys' time joining me on the program today. We'll be back on Monday for another episode of the Joe Gaither Show. Y'all can always, of course, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon, and of course right there on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.
I think some people, want things to happen. Other people wish things will happen, and, some people make things happen. And I think that's a challenge all of us have. I mean, our fans, the atmosphere in the stadium, the players, the coaches, everybody involved in Alabama football needs to make it happen in terms of best spirit, positive attitude, positive energy, everybody going out and doing their best job to be their best, to support the team as well as the team to do their best, to play their best so that we have the best chance to be successful in this game. But I think it's big that we have an atmosphere, and our fans have always been great, that can impact and affect this game and help our players have success in the game, which will help our confidence in terms of growing for the future.